Welcome to the Brad Haider Podcast, Part 4 of our 2013 Wall-to-Wall Baseball MLB Preview. Today we're going to be breaking down the National League East. Here with me, as always, my partner in crime, Joe Pascal. Joe, once again, welcome back.
Appreciate it. Good to be back.
All right, so National League East. Had some big moves with the teams in this division in the offseason, namely the Atlanta Braves and as well as the Washington Nationals, both making some pretty key acquisitions to try and kind of take their teams over the edge in the postseason. As always, as we've done in the previous three previews, let's start off with our projected order of finish in the division. Joe, I'll let you go first.
All right. The team that's going to take this division is going to be the Washington Nationals. They did some things in the offseason to shore up some spots. Didn't really lose much. Good team last year. If their pitching staff can stay healthy, I think they'll be a really, really dangerous team. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Washington Nationals 1, Atlanta Braves 2. Definitely a team that's gonna go big or go home. Got a lot of hard hitting dudes out there. Guys that can just crush the ball. So, it's going to be one of those things where if they're not hitting the ball well, they're going to struggle because a lot of those guys aren't necessarily guys that are going to hit for high averages, but they're going to hit high power numbers. So, them second, they could definitely, if they all get hot at the same time, definitely a team that could take the division, but just a little reserved, and especially if their pitching staff's good, but I don't know, just not as good as what I think the Nationals are going to be. So, it's like the Braves second. Third, I got the Phillies. A team that's been good in the past, but I had some guys leave. Some guys are getting older, things like that. So I think they're going to finish third. Fourth, you got the Mets. The Mets are, I don't know, still, they're not that good. They're not going to be that good of a team. They're going to finish, towards the bottom of all Major League, I think. They still have some players, still got David Wright. So, they'll have some production, but not much. And then fifth place, I got the Miami Marlins. After that fire sale where they just sold pretty much their entire team outside of Giancarlo Stanton to the Toronto Blue Jays.
All right. Much like the American League West, I also have the same projected order of finish as you in the NL East. Once again, Washington, Atlanta, Philadelphia, the New York Metropolitans, and the Miami Marlins. So let's get into our team-by-team breakdowns here. We're going to start off in the nation's capital, Washington Nationals, defending AL East division champs. Definitely improved from last season, that's for sure. They added Dan Haren to their pitching staff, Denard Spahn in their lineup, re-signed Adam LaRoche, and they also signed Rafael Soriano from the Yankees to help shore up their bullpen. So, as far as the Nationals go, I think they didn't hurt themselves or, lose anything, but they definitely improved. So let's go ahead and run through their lineup real fast. So, catcher, got Kurt Suzuki, first baseman, Adam LaRoche, second base, Danny Espinosa, third base, Ryan Zimmerman, shortstop, Ian Desmond, left field, Bryce Harper, center field, Denard Spahn, right field, Jason Worth, and then their pitching rotation shaping up to be Steven Strasburg, Gio Gonzalez, Jordan Zimmerman, Ross Detweiler, and Dan Haren. So, first thing I want to talk about the Nationals here is their pitching staff. So, Strasburg, Gonzalez. Obviously, Strasburg, when he's pitched, he's been as good as advertised.
Yeah, he's been pretty dominant. He's just one of those guys that can go out there and you don't really have to worry about whether or not he's going to perform. He throws gas.
Yeah.
He keeps them in games, keeps them competitive.
So, do you think with the addition of Dan Haren, obviously they lost Edwin Jackson from last year, and then Ross Detweiler, who's in the rotation, do you think that this is the best pitching staff in the league, top to bottom, as far as starting pitching?
I don't know about that in the division. Yeah, obviously. It's up there from top to bottom as one of the best. As long as Dan Haren can, come back strong and be healthy. And they don't encounter things with Strasburg or anything like that. Top to bottom, I mean, it's gonna be a tough one to beat for sure.
Yeah, that's another question with the rotation is what they're doing with Strasburg as far as the innings limit. Obviously, last season they shut him down, didn't have him in the postseason. But also, Gio Gonzalez won, I believe, 21 games last year.
Yeah, something like
so
that.
Obviously, he can step up and fill in and be kind of that ace if they do decide to shut down Strasburg again, which they haven't really said too much. I think they've said they're going to up his innings limit.
I feel like at some point you just gotta let it go. I mean, you can only keep him under wraps for so long. I mean, you gotta get as much as you can out of them. And if they have a chance, I think if they're dominating, they might shut them down for a little bit towards the end, and then let them rest up for the playoffs or something like that if they have a big lead. But if it's a tight race, you got to pitch him, and then I feel like if you get to the playoffs, you have to throw him. He's a great pitcher. I mean, it's just one of those. I don't understand. I understand the limits thing, especially coming off injury and stuff like that if he's young. But he's been there for a few years. I mean, he needs to be pitching all the time. They don't need to put limits on him or anything like that.
Well, yeah, one of the things everybody kept saying last year when the whole innings limit thing came up was, why not just start him? Don't use him for, April and, some of May. Put him through, an extended spring training so he doesn't enter the rotation until, the middle of May, early June, and then you'd have him for the playoffs with his innings limit. Or don't let him throw complete games, take him out so you kind of save innings as towards the innings limit, so you'd have him for later in the year.
Yeah, I mean I understand all that stuff, but I don't. I just think he's at the point now where he shouldn't be on an innings limit. I mean they should be smart with him, still, and know how to manage them. And that's part of the thing with managing and being a coach. You just have to know when to go with him and when not to. But I don't think he should have a set innings limit because there's going to be times if he went to extended spring training and came in late, it's going to take him. It might take him a little longer to adjust to the flow of Major League Baseball because you're not facing Major League guys in extended spring training and things like that.
Throwing simulated games, pitching against the minors.
It's not the same thing. It's not high pressure situations like he is when he's pitching against the Braves or the Phillies or teams like that. And also, I mean, like I was saying, you could shut him down early a little bit and then bring him back for the playoffs, but even still, I feel like you get a rhythm. You break that up at all, I mean, it's hard to get back to where you were. So I think it's just one of those things where they just need to keep an eye on him and let him throw. If they feel like he needs a rest, scratch him from a start every once in a while. Let him get an extra, 4 or 5 days rest, and then throw him. But don't shut him down completely at any point. Let him start right when he needs to, and let him just ride throughout the entire season and then into the playoffs.
All right, so let's talk about their lineup now. Obviously, excuse me, not any kind of big boppers, but definitely guys who can drive the ball and score runs. Mm-hmm. So, LaRoche, he can produce RBIs, he can drive runs in. Zimmerman, he has 30 and 100 potential. And then Harper, the young kid that they brought up last year, kind of the NL's version of Mike Trout, I guess. And he contributed. It wasn't kind of just a publicity move. It was legitimate baseball.
He's good.
Intentions
he
there.
He can play. He's definitely a ball player.
Yeah. And then Ian Desmond, probably one of the more underrated shortstops, was an all-star, but ultimately missed the game due to injury. He's another guy in their lineup that's a solid baseball player. And I think Denard Spahn in center field, he can bring something to their lineup as far as getting on base and then stealing.
And Jason Worth in right field has potential to, hit the ball.
That's what they paid him $120 million or whatever.
Paid for. I mean, he hadn't really lived up to all that yet, but I mean, he definitely has potential to, hit high power numbers and just, produce well for this team offensively.
Yeah, obviously with Worth, he missed a decent amount of time with injuries and whatnot. But when he's been on the field, he's been crucial in their lineup. That's for sure. All right, so let's move on to the Atlanta Braves, who made some big splashes this offseason.
Went out,
bringing in
a lot of money.
The brothers Upton, Justin, and BJ. via trades, or was BJ a free agent? I forget exactly.
Yeah, one of them was
But
traded. Yeah.
They traded with Arizona, bringing in Justin once they had BJ in the fold. And that outfield is going to be real interesting to watch this coming season. With Hayward and now BJ Upton and Justin Upton. And Justin's more of the power guy of the two Upton brothers. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see. But let's go ahead and run through their lineup here. Catcher, Brian McCann, who I think is going to miss the start of the year. I think that's what I read. He has some injury or something like that. First base, Freddie Freeman, who's been coming along nicely. Yeah, just power-hitting first baseman. Second base, Dan Ugla. Third base, Chris Johnson, who they acquired from the Diamondbacks in the Justin Upton trade. Shortstop, Andrelton Simmons. Left field, Justin Upton. Center field, BJ Upton. Right field, Jason Hayward. And then their starting pitching rotation is going to be Tim Hudson, Chris Medlin, Mike Minor, Paul Maholm, and Brandon Beachy, who's coming off of Tommy John surgery. So he might be kind of slow to start the year, but we'll see how that pans out. So top to bottom, they've got some guys who can, score some runs, but their pitching rotation is going to be kind of their big question because obviously they traded Tommy Hanson to the Angels in the offseason. Tim Hudson was thrown out of the bullpen at points last year. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so.
Not the same pitcher he was when he was with the Oakland Athletics. And Paul Maholm has a lot of major league experience, and so does Mike Minor and Beachy. Just obviously with Beachy coming off Tommy John surgery, you don't know how long he's going to need to kind of get back in the flow of things. But I think this is going to be a team that's going to score a lot of runs.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, like I was saying earlier when I was going through how I think they're going to finish. I mean, their pitching staff, like you said, guys that are getting older, or some guys that are getting older, you got guys coming off injuries, things like that. But, I mean, their lineup is going to crush the ball. I mean, Dan Ugla doesn't hit for power, doesn't hit for average, my bad.
Yeah.
Hits a lot of power. Freddie Freeman, not to cover the ball. Brian McCann, you said he's probably going to miss the beginning of the season, but they're looking for him to, miss the first couple weeks. He'll be back middle of April. He's a guy who can crush the ball. You got the Uptons out there. You got Hayward. I mean, this is a team that is going to live and die by the long ball.
Yeah, I think that's a fair observation. I just think, Washington kind of has an equivalent lineup, maybe a little less potent, but I just think Washington's pitching is far superior, and that's going to kind of force Atlanta back into the second spot in the division. But I think it could very well be a case where a team like Washington wins 100 games and Atlanta wins like low 90s, and Atlanta's a wild card just because, the division they play in, the team they have ahead of them. But let's talk more about the Upton brothers moving to Atlanta this offseason. Do you like the moves? Obviously, Justin was kind of floated out there as kind of on the block, and he was kind of the more prized of the two. But obviously, they brought BJ in first, and then made the move for Justin.
I mean, sure, I like it. It works well. I mean, they're brothers, so it's not like you have to worry about anything. Like, you bring in big-time players that are conflicting, egos and personalities. I mean, those guys like obviously brothers group together.
Yeah.
So they're gonna
have a good relationship.
Yeah, they have a good relationship. They'll get along. And that's also a good thing for outfield, because you gotta be able to trust the guys out there and have a feel for it, especially like when there's a ball in the gap or something like that, like what the other person's doing. And so I think having those two brothers out there is definitely gonna. I mean, it's definitely not a bad thing bringing both of them in.
Yeah. And now with Jason Hayward out and right, I mean, that's a pretty athletic outfield as well as kind of potent at the plate.
Yeah.
I mean, all three of those guys can hit the ball out of the ballpark as well as play good defense. Obviously, BJ has kind of had a little bit of a rough patch in Tampa the last couple of years, kind of not producing at the plate the same way he had been early in his career, but still a very serviceable major league center fielder.
I mean, it happens. When you're down, I mean, I know we talked about this when we talked about the AL East. If I was playing in front of, like 1,000 fans at a dome, I mean, it's kind of hard to, get excited to go play every day.
Yeah, but he also had a few like blow-ups with some of his teammates, I think, if I remember correctly, like just some shouting matches. But hey, I mean, it happens.
It's a 162-game season. I mean, tempers are going to flare. People are going to get frustrated. Just one of those things. I mean, I think he's coming into a good environment right now, especially since they got his brother. I mean, I think, and with the support around him in that lineup, he doesn't have to be a guy that goes out there and like, is the guy. I mean, he just has to do his part, and if he can, do like average, just be like an average guy out there, but play like good defense. I mean, that's all they really need.
Yeah, if he can hit kind of 280, maybe.
I wasn't even thinking that high, but yeah, if he gets 280, they're going to be real good.
Yeah. So let's talk more about the Braves pitching here. Obviously, there's the questions with their starting rotation, but to kind of complement their questions about the starting rotation, their bullpen is probably one of the best in baseball, with guys like Craig Kimbrell and all the other dudes they have out there. Yeah. So I think if it does come down to a scenario where the starting pitching it doesn't perform well on a game-to-game basis, their bullpen could definitely help them out in situations like that.
Oh yeah, but it's just a matter of can their starting pitchers keep them in games to where their bullpen can have an effect.
Yeah, obviously if their starting pitching gives up 10 runs, the bullpen doesn't do real well.
Yeah,
but
if you can keep it within a couple runs when you get to the 6th, 7th inning, I mean they have enough power in their lineup to where they can hit, and their bullpen's gonna be able to shut guys down. So they'll be able to do fine. It's just a matter of they just need to produce consistently offensively throughout that lineup, not just like home runs, but some guys hit for average, and that starting pitching staff has to keep games within reach.
Yeah, for sure. Now, do you think Atlanta does have like a realistic shot to win this division? Like, if you were to put a percentage on it.
I mean, obviously I can't go 50-50 because I put the Nationals ahead, but I mean, I could see it being about like 60-40, 40% chance the Braves win it, just based on the fact that the Nationals could definitely, have injuries with Strasburg, guys just don't perform like they did last year, things like that, and the Braves lineup, like I said, it's go big, go home. They're going to live and die by the long ball. If they get guys getting hot and hitting bombs all the time, hit ball to gap, hitting it deep, getting a lot of RBIs, I could definitely see them, winning the division and being a scary team to face come playoffs.
Yeah. Now, the Braves lineup kind of reminds me of like one of those Yankee lineups from a few years ago where, the pitching, they don't have the best pitching in the world, but they're going to score so many runs where it's like, all right, well, our pitchers give up 6 runs, but we're going to win 10-6.
Yeah. Because
we're going to hit 4 home runs. And
they're definitely going to have some games where they do that. They score runs like 10 runs, stuff like that. And I think they're going to have games where, they struggle at the plate just because, like I said, it's a go big or go home with them.
Yeah, a lot of free swingers down in Atlanta. All right, so let's head up to the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia Phillies. Obviously winning the World Series not too long ago, but kind of taking a step back.
Yeah, not really the same team that they were.
Definitely the window's kind of closing as far as the Phillies are concerned. They've had the injury concerns the last couple of years. With their big guys like Howard and Utley, and then on their pitching staff. But let's go ahead and run through their lineup real fast here. Catcher Carlos Ruiz, who is going to miss the first 25 games of the regular season after testing positive for a banned substance in the offseason.
What an idiot.
Yeah, I forget exactly what he popped positive for.
I don't remember, but what an idiot.
Yeah, definitely not a good way to start the year. First base, Ryan Howard. Second base, Chase Utley. Third base, Michael Young, who they brought in the offseason to play third base. Finally, they have a real third baseman. No offense to Placido Polanco. Shortstop, Jimmy Rollins. Left field, Don Brown. Center field, Ben Revere, who they brought in the offseason as well from the Minnesota Twins in a trade. Right field, Delman Young. And then their pitching rotation looks like it's going to be Hamels, Cliff Lee, Roy Halladay, Kyle Kendrick, and Joe Lannon. So kind of the infield's kind of what you'd expect from the Phillies, but the outfield I think is going to be the big question on this team. Obviously, Ben Revere had a nice year last year. He's a young center fielder who showed some promise, but then the corners are where the real questions lie out there. Don Brown, who's kind of been an enigma with the Phillies. He's shown potential, but when he's gotten his shot in the major leagues, he just hasn't performed like he's been projected to. Delman Young, was good for the Tigers last year, never great. Former number 1 pick, who definitely hasn't lived up to kind of his billing coming up through the ranks of the minor leagues. And then the pitching staff, obviously you got the big name guys like Hamilsley and Halladay, but then those guys have missed a lot of time over the last couple of years and just not performed. Like Cliff Lee, he didn't get his first win until June last year.
Yeah, that's not his fault though.
Yeah,
he was losing some 1-0 games, 2-1 games. So he was losing some.
Yeah.
His ERA was not the best, but he definitely should have had some wins before that. That lineup was killing him offensively.
Yeah, obviously because Utley and Howard weren't there in the beginning of the year. Like the thing with Lee last year was they'd leave him in for one batter too long. I remember a game I went to against the Dodgers. He was pitching great. He was cruising. He'd only given up 1 run or something like that. Had only 3 hits. It's in the 8th inning. The Dodgers get runners on first and second. It has a guy and 2 strikes on a guy, and then gives up a double off the wall with 2 outs and blows the game open. So just stuff like that, and that ultimately leads to him getting the loss. So I think that can be contributed to why he didn't get his first win until so late in the year. But I think the big question with the Phillies, or the big concern with the Phillies, is just health.
Yeah.
Because if they have this lineup for most of the year, if they can get 100 games, 100, 130 games out of guys like Utley and Ryan Howard and stuff like that, I think they'll be in it. I don't think they have enough to compete with Atlanta and Washington, but they could definitely finish above 500.
They definitely have the talent. I know you were calling out Donnie Brown and Delman Young out there. It's guys that have struggled or not performed like they should have, but it's guys that do have some talent. So all it takes is 1 year to turn around. You get 1 good year out of them. I think something could happen. It's kind of like the Orioles last year. Orioles weren't that great of a team, but guys just turn it on at the right times, and things could happen. I don't think this team is going to finish third and third in the division either.
Yeah.
But you never know. They have a lot of talent out there. It's just can they play up to that potential?
But do you think they have a legitimate shot to finish at least above 500? I don't think they're going to win 90 games, but I could see them easily winning 85.
I could see them win right around 500, or right around the 500 mark. And you got Hamilsley and Halladay, not as good as they used to be. You go back a couple years ago, 2-3 years ago. You have those certain 3. It's dangerous.
I think Hamels is in his prime right now.
Yeah, I'm still saying, if you had those 3 years ago, or 2-3 years ago, it's a team that you don't want to face.
Yeah.
Now you do it, and it's just kind of they're still really, really good, but you're not as scared to face them anymore.
Yeah, and then I think it's just going to be if they're all the horses are in the lineup, they can win with anybody. They can compete with anybody, but if they don't have a full boat for long portions of the year, I think it could be a long season in Philadelphia.
I'm still not a big fan of Ryan Howard. Never have been. Never will be.
Why?
Why? Because he is a guy that he hits bombs. He does that. But
he does strike out a lot, which
a lot of his outs are his average is terrible, but the majority of his outs are strikeouts. It's either he hits the ball deep or he strikes out. And I don't know. Like I've talked before, I don't like guys that do that. You got to put the ball in play. You got to be a team player. If you can't be a positional hitter, you don't. You're not as good of a baseball player as you could be.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so let's head up I-95 here to Flushing, Queens, New York Mets. Obviously, they've kind of been in a rough spot the last couple of years. Traded away R.A. Dickey in the offseason, who won the National League Cy Young Award, so that was definitely a head-scratcher. But I think the deal they got back they've been making they've made some moves recently that, the fans might not have been too happy with, but I think you'll start to see kind of the fruits of those trades kind of come to fruition in the next couple of years with the prospects that they received in return. Obviously, the first trade being with the San Francisco Giants in 2010, acquiring their top pitching prospect, Zach Wheeler, who I think is going to break into the major leagues at some point during this season. And then in the trade with Toronto for R.A. Dickey, acquiring Travis d'Arnaud and Noah Syndergaard. So the Mets currently have 3 top 30 prospects in the major leagues, according to MLB.com. But for the 2013 season, I think the Mets are in for a long year. Obviously, last year they played well in the first half. We're kind of a surprise team. We're kind of in the thick of things, but then coming out of the All-Star break, lost something like 14 of 15 games or something like that, and then just the wheels completely came off. And they kind of fell off and settled back in the 4th place in the division. But let's go ahead and run through their lineup, just see what the Mets are going to roll out in 2013. Catcher, John Buck. First base, Ike Davis. Second base, Daniel Murphy. Third base, David Wright. Shortstop, Ruben Tejada. Left field, Lucas Duda. Center field, Kirk Neuenhuis. Right field, Mike Baxter. And then their starting rotation is going to be Johan Santana, John Neese, Sean Markham, Dylan G., and Matt Harvey, who debuted last year, was their top prospect in their organization for a few years before that. And proved to show some potential as a starting pitcher on this team. But I think the biggest question with the Mets is, how are they going to score runs?
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, Mike Baxter hits like 220. Lucas Duda.
He's got David Wright up there.
Yeah, but I don't think I don't think the other guys are gonna get on base enough for David Wright to have a lot of RBI opportunities.
I mean,
they got a lot of guys who, like Lucas Duda and Neuenhuis, strike out a lot. Daniel Murphy, he'll hit like 280, but has like no power. Mm-hmm. And then Ruben Tejada is a nice player, but he's not a guy that's going to hit 300.
I mean, no, that's why we have them projected to finish 4th. I mean, they're not going to score a lot of runs. I mean, you're going to say they're just going to be terrible because there's obviously worse teams out there. But I don't know.
And then you don't know the health of Santana. What's that going to be? He's going to rehab. They shut him down towards the end of last year. I think he was never right after he threw that no-hitter, throwing like 130 pitches or something like that. He just seemed to kind of not be the same pitcher he was before that.
Yeah, it's a team that's going to struggle a lot. Just offensively, pitching. Not a lot of big superstars, big talent guys. Guys that are just kind of a decent amount of those guys are guys that are just kind of like trade pieces. Just guys that you just kind of add in. You never know. I mean, somebody could get hot. David Wright could have like a all-star type year, something like that, where they could hang around a little bit. But then after the all-star break, I think it's just going to be one of those things kind of like last year. Not necessarily going to lose 14 to 15 or whatever, but it's just going to be one of those things where second half of the season they're just going to fall behind and just stay behind. The Braves, the Nationals, even the Phillies.
So, what do you think is a realistic expectation as far as win total for the Mets? I'm thinking somewhere around 70, give or take 5 games either way.
Yeah, I was going to say probably about 65.
65.
Which is close to you.
Yeah, that's kind of the low.
Yeah, I'll say about
the
65.
Lower limit.
Yeah, I can see 70. I'll say 60. I'll put 65 plus or minus 5. Where you have 70 plus or minus 5.
I think there's going to be a point in the year, especially towards the end of the year, maybe before the September roster expansion, where they're going to call up Wheeler and d'Arnaud just to see, if they're ready for major leagues and see what they got going into next year.
Yeah, and it's definitely going to help them for the future, but for this year, it's just a team that's not quite there.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's head down south.
Way south.
Way south. Down to the 305. MIA all day. Miami Marlins.
You're an idiot.
this franchise, they swindle the city of Miami. First they tear down the Orange Bowl, which had a special place in my heart. And then they swindle the city of Miami out of hundreds of millions of dollars to get this new stadium built. They sign all these guys last offseason.
Ugly ass stadium too.
It has some nice features.
And lime green padding on the wall.
Well, see, that confused me because when I first saw that, I thought it was going to be like green screen so they could project ads on the different ads on the wall.
Yeah, that'd be cool, but it's still.
And then
it's not though. It looks horrible.
And then their little home run thing out in center field, it looks like one of those really cheesy county fair rides. And it's just
and then you have the fish tank in the wall and stuff, which is all right.
I think that's cool.
It's cool, but it's just something that's just
And then they have the nightclub out in left field, the Clevelander.
Yeah, they tried too hard.
It beats the hell out of Dolphin Stadium.
They tried too hard to do too many different things.
Yeah, and they still can't. And they still draw minor league attendance numbers.
Oh yeah, they got a new stadium. Brought in all these big time players last year. Spent a ton of money on everything. Team was supposed to be good. Even when the start of the season, before people realized that they weren't good, they still weren't drawing fans.
Yeah.
It's just not. Florida and Major League sports do not go hand in hand. It's just they just don't draw.
Especially baseball.
Yeah, especially baseball. Any sport really. The Heat, when they win, they draw some, but they still don't. They still could have better attendance numbers, and they're one of the best teams in the NBA.
Yeah.
And, any other sport that's down there, they struggle with attendance numbers. So, having a team in Florida, especially, not necessarily
Miami.
The city of Miami, where there's so many different other things going on, and it's not necessarily in the best area of Miami, it's just, I don't know, it's just not a good mix.
See, Miami's a lot like LA in this sense. A lot of people that live in Miami and Atlanta, not Atlanta, Los Angeles, didn't grow up there. So they come in with their own teams that they root for. Mm-hmm. Especially Miami, they get people that come down from, especially the Northeast, the New York area.
Fans and things like that.
Yeah. Yankees fans, Mets fans. So they're not going to root for the Marlins.
Yeah.
And they don't. There's just so many other options as far as kind of ways to spend disposable income down there. Whether it be the nightclubs or fishing or whatever people spend their money on down there. And baseball is not high on that list, especially a team that's not competing.
Yeah.
The Heat when the Heat are winning, people want to go because it's kind of like the trendy thing to do.
Exactly.
Sports in towns like LA and Miami, they're kind of like, if they're winning, it's kind of like the it thing to do in those cities. So, you're going to see the stars sitting courtside and the arenas are going to be packed. But they're not the type of fans that are going to come go to a baseball game, in the middle of August when the Marlins are 15 games back in the division.
It's an icon type thing. It's kind of one of those things where you go to, in those cities, in the big cities, people aren't necessarily dedicated to this team. People just go just because, it's I want to be seen being at a Heat game, supporting the Heat because it makes me look good. They suck. People are just going to be like, well, no, I don't really care about them. I don't care about the Marlins. I don't want to go to those games. It's not like towns, smaller towns, where it's I'll use the Grizzlies, for example. And that's a different sport. That, St. Louis, Cardinals, towns where it's more people are invested in those teams directly in the city because, it's a little more blue-collar, grew up there. One of those things where people just live and die by those teams. Miami and just Florida in general, it's one of those things where people are not necessarily fully invested into those teams for the most part.
And also a team like the Grizzlies, they're the only major league team in that city. So they want to keep it, and they're going to support it.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and run through the Marlins lineup here just to see kind of what they're in for this year. Catcher, Rob Brantley. First base, Logan Morrison. Second base, Donovan Solano. Third base, Placido Polanco. Shortstop, Adini Hechivara, if I said that right. Left field, Juan Pierre coming back to the Marlins. Kind of one of the heroes of the 2003 World Series team. Center field, Justin Ruggiano. Right field, Giancarlo Stanton. And then their pitching rotation projects to be Ricky Nolasco, Jacob Turner, Henderson Alvarez, Nathan Eovaldi, and Wade LeBlanc.
And they also have a new manager.
Mike Redmond, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, that was another thing I think that did them in last year. Just kind of helped fuel the kind of breakdown down there. Is
Guillen didn't start off too well.
Ozzie Guillen just needed to shut the heck up.
Just making comments, down in Little Cuba about Castro and how he's. I don't remember exactly what he said, but he said something like.
I respect the hell out of him because he's been able to stay in power for so long.
Yeah, something like that. Just something stupid. It really, he didn't mean anything by it, I don't think, but it just blew up. And saying that in the neighborhood that they're in, and the city that they're in, just a bad start.
Marlins Park is located in the Little Havana section of Miami.
Yeah.
Probably not the smartest thing to be kind of saying you look up to or admire the dictator of Cuba, which
everybody
probably has caused many of the residents of Miami's family members, a lot of pain and suffering.
Yeah, the Marlins just had a lot of problems. It starts up, with their management.
It starts up top. David Sampson is one of the most hated people in baseball.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never really. I liked individual Marlins teams before, but I've never really liked the Marlins as a whole. They've haven't been a team that long, and they've won 2 World Series, but after each World Series, they blow up the team. They trade pretty much the entire team away.
Yeah.
And just try to make things, bigger and better, and it just never works. And I just never really understood the moves that they make. Like last year, they brought in all those players, and it was just kind of everything clashed, and you're just overpaid. And then they realized that they paid way too much money. They didn't have any money left.
And blew it up.
Yes, they had to get rid of it all.
Because they were thinking, all right, we got this new ballpark. We're going to bring in all these guys. We're going to sell it out.
Yeah, they brought in all these Hispanic guys.
And then once the novelty kind of wore off in the new stadium, they couldn't draw.
Yeah.
So we can't
because the team was underperforming.
Yeah.
Incredibly.
And we can't make payroll, so we got to start dumping.
Mm-hmm. And now you're left with this lineup, which is
the only kind of holdovers from last year, as far as contributors, were Logan Morrison, who was one of the funniest people on Twitter. So if you don't follow him, go give Lomo a follow.
He is hilarious.
And then Giancarlo Stanton is kind of, their only star player.
Yeah, and then you got Ricky Nolasco in the rotation. That's really big name left over. Still, you got rid of guys like Josh Johnson,
Anibal Sanchez, and Mark Burley.
Yeah, guys with this team. And Josh Johnson, really, I know he's been injured some, but guy was really important to this pitching staff the last few years. He was the ace. Guy that just went out there and helped them, stay in somewhat contention, not being completely terrible.
So, do you think that it's going to be a battle between them and the Astros for the worst team in Major League Baseball?
Yeah. Like we talked about off air, I definitely think that they're 2 of the worst teams in Major League Baseball this year, without a doubt.
All right, so let's officially make our wager.
Okay.
All right. So, me and Joe were talking about this.
Who's going to be worse, the Marlins or the Astros?
So, you want...
I don't care. You pick.
All right.
Who you want?
So, it's whatever team finishes with a better record, or are we doing whoever's team finishes with the worst record?
It's the same difference. If you pick...
No, but what I'm saying...
Oh, yeah, no. You're picking the team who you think is going to finish with the better record.
Okay. I'll take the Astros.
You changed it up on me, man. Alright. That's fine.
Alright, so let's write this down.
I'll take the Marlins.
Brad with the Astros. And Joe has the Marlins.
That's fine. I'll take the Marlins.
Right,
I'll take Giancarlo Stanton and Logan Morrison.
All right. So what's the wager here? What are we betting on? So it's whoever has the better record.
Better record at the end of the season.
All right. Now what's
wins? The team with the better record wins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if the Astros finish with 50 wins and the Marlins finish with 46, I win. Or
the
vice versa.
Astros might not get 50 wins.
That's why they play the games here. That's why they play the games. All right. So what do we? What's the wager here?
I don't know. What do you want it to be?
I don't know, an adult beverage. Trying to keep it PG.
Keep it PG. No, we'll do something. We'll do something a little more extreme than that.
How about if the Astros finish with a better record, you have to wear an Astros shirt for a day.
Maybe for a week.
A week?
We'll do a week, and if the Marlins finish better, you have to wear a Marlins shirt for a week.
All right, and then the guy who has to wear it has to buy the shirt as well.
Yeah, he has to buy the shirt, and then we can do it. I don't know. We can add in, like, you gotta buy the person maybe like an adult beverage or something else also.
Yeah. You have to wear it out in public.
Yeah,
you can't just, like, sleep in it or something.
No, you gotta wear it, like, all day, every day.
Yeah.
You can wash it, obviously.
All right, let's shake on this, make it official. Gentlemen's. All right, so I've got the Astros, Joe has the Marlins.
Yeah, I'll take my boys, Logan Morrison, Placido Polanco, Juan Pierre,
Giancarlo Stanton, Donovan Solano. We got this.
All right, we'll see.
Without a doubt.
All right, so just kind of wrap up here and wrap up our NL East preview. Give me one storyline you're going to be kind of following in the NL East.
All right, storyline to follow.
Yeah.
Definitely it's going to be
if it revolves around Strasburg. You know, if they're going to keep him on an innings limit, if they're going to shut him down early, if what they're going to do with him exactly.
I mean, I feel like that they shouldn't put him on an innings limit. Like I said earlier, it's one of those things where he's far enough along his career. I mean, if he was top prospect, you're going to bring you up, and like last year it makes sense. He's still early on in his career, come off injuries and stuff like that. But this year, I feel like they just need to let him loose, see what he can do. Because he only has. I mean, I know he's still early in his career, but pitchers only have so long. You never know when he's going to get injured again. So you don't want to keep him on an innings limit. And then if you do that, shut him down. You don't you don't do well in the playoffs. Next year he comes out, has to get Tommy John again or something like that. His career might be done. You don't want to waste him right now. So I feel like it's at the point where they just need to let him fly, let him go. Scratch from the start here and there if they want to give him a little more rest. But they need to, just let him pitch. And so I'll be watching to see exactly how they handle that situation.
All right, my storyline revolves around the New York Mets and kind of their young guys some of them are with the big club, some of them are still in the minor leagues, guys like Zach Wheeler and Travis D'Arnaud, and just kind of when they come up in the majors, how effective they are. Obviously, there's been talk, the buzz with the Met fan has been, oh, we got Wheeler and Harvey. And now with D'Arnaud and Noah Syndergaard, who's still a few years away in the fold, it's going to be interesting to see how those guys kind of pan out. Obviously, Harvey came up at the end of last year and pitched some good games, made his debut out in Arizona and pitched very well. And just kind of how those guys project, because the Mets have kind of been in a tailspin the last several years. So I think, just for their fans and for their organization, they got to have some bright young pieces moving forward. So give me a breakout player for the division, kind of a guy who either is going to get his first full big league season or
what's the guy
going to break out this year.
Yeah, the guy I'm going to go with, he's been up in the majors for a couple years now, I believe. He's still a young guy, early mid-20s. Freddie Freeman of the Braves. I think that adding the other power guys around him in the lineup and just having all those other pieces in there, it's going to help him, relax more. He doesn't have to be, big guy, provide as much, but I think that's going to help him to actually do better, hit more power numbers. He's going to be, used to pitching more, hit for better average, things like that. It's just going to be an all-around complete first baseman. Just what you look for in a first baseman. So I think he's going to be a guy to watch for. That's going to definitely help this lineup. And, with all the other stars around him, that's another reason why I think he's going to be a breakout player. Because, he's got guys like McCann, Uptons, and Hayward, and Dan other guys that are, known for hitting the ball good. And I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be one of their best players and contribute the most to them.
Never underestimate lineup protection.
Yeah. It's definitely a big thing.
I think that's what helped David Ortiz out
Yeah.
when he had Manny Ramirez.
Not only just from a stance of, they can't pitch around you, they actually have to throw to you, but also just from a mentality stance, because you got guys in front of you hitting well, guys behind you hitting well. I mean, it allows you just to relax a little bit more, it takes the pressure off you some. So I definitely think that's going to help Freddie Freeman just thrive this year. I mean, he could end up being the best player on that team this year, offensively.
Wouldn't surprise me.
All right, I'm going to go with Ben Revere of the Phillies. He had kind of a breakout year last year with the Twins, but playing up in Minnesota, he didn't really get a lot of pub. But I think if he kind of has a repeat year or just even improves with the Phillies, I think a lot of people are going to kind of know his name by the end of the year. And I think his success is kind of crucial to how well the Phillies do overall as a team because, you don't know how well Howard and Utley are going to hold up and the other two outfielders and Dominic Brown and Dillman Young are going to perform. So if Ben Revere can kind of have somewhat of a breakout year or just kind of repeat the same level of success he had last year, I think that's going to bode well for the Phillies' chances to have a fairly good season. So that's about wraps it up for our NL East preview here. Once again, projected order finish. Me and Joe both in agreement on this. Atlanta, Washington.
No, Washington.
Washington, Atlanta, Philadelphia, Metropolitans, and then the Marlins. So that does it here for our NL East preview on the Brad Haider podcast. Stay tuned for Part 5, where we'll be breaking down the National League Central Division, the now 5-team National League Central Division, obviously with the Astros moving over to the American League. But until next time, Brad Haider, Joe Pascal, adios.
Peace.